we've talked a lot about this in between media this season. There's going to be curveballs coming your way.
Hate's a strong word. I dislike Kirk Cousins more than probably any other quarterback in the league.
I get a little bit of that rookie-itis,
I would have said, I would love some of what you're smoking.
Even though I strayed, I'm still stuck between an interpretation, what it all means. Can I make a difference for something different? My mind in prison, then I saw the vision. Played the field, it's no competition. Found success through the repetition. If it's impossible, stick to the mission. I'm just cruising through on my way to get it. I found myself somewhere in between. Yeah, I found myself somewhere in between. Found myself somewhere in between. Yeah, I found myself somewhere in between. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
So one thing that really sets us apart here is we're not afraid to talk about other things that maybe aren't super fantasy related.
Do what you can to become a better person, to become a better human.
All right, and here we go back on the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, your destination for both some feel-good life and lifestyle advice combined with some mediocre fantasy football advice as well. I'm your regular host, Seth Woolcock, joined by my usual accomplice here, Nate Polvo. Nate, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? It's 100 degrees here right now, and it sucks. Fortunately,
but it's a dry heat.
Yeah, that's true. It is. I don't know, man. It feels more humid than it is. We have a swamp cooler, so that makes our house super humid too.
Okay.
But I'm in the basement. It's like an ice box down here, which thank God.
Awesome. The dog days of summer are approaching, guys. Today it's Wednesday, June 16th. If you're listening to the pre-recorded audio version, it's Friday, June 18th. Today we have a special edition of the show today. We're going to be talking about Dynasty Fantasy Football. Usually this is a redraft-focused show, but we wanted to bring a little bit of Dynasty to today's show to give some advice for some newer players or some players who traditionally focus on redraft. And to do that, we wanted to bring in a very special member of the In Between Media team, someone who has over 15 years of Dynasty Fantasy Football advice, none other than Gary Zamarripa. Gary, what's up, brother?
Seth, Nate, glad to be here. This is good times.
What's up, man? Good to have you. Good to see your face. It's been too long since I saw your face.
Likewise, yeah, exactly.
Tonight, guys, we have a very special show for everybody. We have Gary here. We're going to be joined by another In Between Media staff member later on in the show. We're also going to be unveiling a new segment, Back in the Day. Super excited about that. Our normal co-host, Scott Rainier, he couldn't join us tonight, so I hope he's doing well out there in Seattle.
Stupid day jobs.
Exactly. Who needs them, man?
Waste of time.
Yes, sir. So, guys, we have a lot to cover, a lot of Dynasty, a lot of redraft to get to, and I think there might be no other better place to start with than our headline hijinks.
I'll never get tired of watching Cam Newton.
I was just gonna say
it cracks me up every time I see it. I love it. If you're listening to the audio version, the intro video has Cam Newton slipping down on the bench, and it's funny.
Absolutely. Shout out to our guy Nate Miller, who creates all those drops for us, and our guy Third and Short, who puts those into video form. We appreciate you fellas. So, guys, since the last time we talked, there has been quite a bit of fantasy football news. Starting with none other than Julio Jones a few weeks back. He was traded to the Tennessee Titans. Definitely one of the teams that was on the list. A.J. Brown, the young gun receiver there, he was doing some recruiting out there to get Julio Jones in the building. So, Nate, I want to start with you, man. What is your headline for Julio Jones heading to the Titans here in 2021?
So, a Titan among receivers now in Tennessee. The reason I went with that specifically was because I think people really are not understanding how not done Julio Jones is. Like, he's still got gas in the tank, man. And how good was Ryan Tannehill with that Corey Davis, A.J. Brown pairing last year? And then they had Adam Humphries. They didn't use Jonnu as much as I think we all would have liked to have seen. But, dude, you just gave him another weapon. You just gave Ryan Tannehill another weapon. an elite weapon. Julio Jones is an elite weapon. When he's on the field, he's probably one of the 5 best receivers in all of football. And I will fight you if you disagree with me.
And Nate, I think a lot of people, they kind of classify Julio Jones with that AJ Green type of feel because they kind of came in the league around the same time, AB Antonio Brown as well. But, when you actually look at the numbers of Julio Jones, guys, he averaged 16.2 PPR points last season in 9 games. Right. So take out 2 games that he left early and only played about 25% of the snaps, and he was averaging over 19 fantasy points per game, PPR that is. That's only behind 3 wide receivers. That's Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Devontae Adams, 1 spot above Calvin Ridley. So he was still, when healthy, at full health, he was still a top 5 fantasy wide receiver.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gary, what is your take here on Julio? You with your vast dynasty experience here, Gary, you've seen wide receivers like this hold value over, decades. So what advice do you have for us here as we approach Julio Jones, not just in redraft, but also in dynasty this season?
So yeah, I had my last in between media article. It was featured Julio Jones and redraft, like Nate was just saying, he's a top 10 guy. He's going to get you points every week. He's still Julio Jones. People kind of they discount him because he's getting older, but he's 32. I mean, that's not old. And then even for dynasty, if I had a contender, I would go after him and I would trade if I could get an early second round pick, give for him, or maybe kind of an unproven like a rookie or second year guy that people are really high on to a contender. I would definitely do that. And I would, in fact, I definitely did. I traded him for Odell Beckham and it was in a package, but that was kind of the comparison there. So Odell's younger and he has a pretty high ceiling as well. But I just wanted to make sure I had that 16.2 points per game with Julio.
Well, I think I know people in dynasty format, people are obsessed with youth. And I get that. For sure. When you're trying to build a long-term winner, but you can't forget about the fact that if you want to win this year, like Tom Brady, I'd love to have Tom Brady coming into the 2021 season because I'm always in win now mode.
Yes.
100% of the time. I don't care. I just picked up an orphan and I've got Julio Jones, one of my wide receivers, and I'm getting offers for him. Like, no. I'm going to keep him because I want to win this year. And Julio Jones is a guy who's going to help you win this season.
Yeah, and Nate, we've been in a lot of dynasty startups over the last couple of weeks here at In Between Media, and I think in a recent best ball draft, and I think if you're playing best ball, Julio Jones is very attractive because we know he has big games throughout his career. So, I mean, obviously, A.J. Brown's there. He's going to be the number 1. Derrick Henry's also going to be the focal point of the offense, but I think it just makes the whole team better when you have a more explosive wide receiver like that. And I think at the end of the day, like, I picked up Julio Jones, and I think it was like in the 10th round of a startup.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and he was like my 4th wide receiver, so he's going in my flex spot, and that's a great high upside guy to have in your flex spot. So anyone out there, as far as redraft goes too, we're still working on our redraft ranks right now, Nate, but I think Julio Jones is definitely going to be a mid-tier wide receiver too, and I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes the season somewhere around that wide receiver 13 to 15 mark.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised either. I almost expect it, I think. And granted, if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, kind of like with AJ Green, if the dude can stay on the field, he's worth having on your roster. But yeah, I mean, redraft wise, he's going to be great. He's going to be a fantastic, and you can get him cheap because people are sleeping on him.
Yeah, and are you guys worried at all? I've been a Calvin Ridley fan for a while. He was one of my all-in selections last season. Obviously, he had a top 5 wide receiver finish last season. I'm not scared off by him at all because he did a lot of his damage last season without Julio Jones on the field. And now he's Kyle Pitts also, who's going to be lining up all over the place to draw off defenses as well. So I think really it's probably an even split for Calvin Ridley and maybe even bumps him up a spot or two in my ranks.
See, I think, I agree. Bump him up a little bit, but also don't forget about Russell Gage, man.
Yep.
In that Atlanta offense. And that offense is going to be a different offense. They're going to be a better offense than they were last year. Matt Ryan, I said it. I sent out that tweet where I basically just here are receipts for takes I have. And if you remember, I said, I think Matt Ryan will be an MVP candidate in 2021. So don't sleep on that offense. Calvin Ridley, Mike Davis, Kyle Pitts, Olamide Zacchaeus even. I mean, these guys are guys that could have real sleeper value.
And Gage is he's cheap to get too. You can get him in Dynasty for a third round pick probably. And then in redraft, that would be one of your last, 10%, 20% picks. You could pick him up.
Absolutely. Yep. Guys, I'm really excited to see how Julio Jones plays out there in Tennessee and how Arthur Smith kind of reshapes his Atlanta offense down in Atlanta. But we'll discuss that more later on throughout the offseason. Some more news coming in over the last couple weeks. Obviously, Jeff Wilson Jr., he has a torn meniscus. He's going to be out at least until November. So make sure he's off any rosters you have or in any IR spots in Dynasty leagues that you may have as well. And then Raheem Mostert as well. Mostert, he's been a very talented back the last few years, but he has struggled with health. Gary, what is your headline right now for this San Francisco backfield that, only a couple weeks into OTAs already dealing with injuries once again?
All right. So my headline, Kyle Shanahan on the state of the 49ers RBs. You can't make the club in the tub. So that's an old sports adage that pretty much means you're not going to be successful on the team if you're always injured.
Yep.
So I guess walking through Mostert. So 2018, he broke his forearm in about the 8th week, injured reserve. 2019, he came back and he had that dream season, helped lead the team to Super Bowl, and just was one of the top guys at running back that kind of came out of nowhere because he was the third stringer to start the season. So he had to work his way up through other injuries ahead of him on the depth chart. And then 2020, we came in, I came in really hot on him because I thought, he got injured. He played, he was going to be good. People were still sleeping on him because of who he was. He came out of nowhere. And he had injury issues again. He had a sprained MCL and a high ankle sprain. So he played only 8 games, but he did in the last 2 years, he had 5.4 yards per carry. And he was the second among RBs that have 100 opportunities in those last 2 years. So when he's healthy, like we were saying with Julio Jones, he can ball. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that it seems like you can't count on the guy because if you have him, you can't really know whether you can put him in your flex spot or your RB2 spot because he might be a day-to-day, he might be a game-time decision and all that stuff that we dealt with last year.
Well, and not to mention, that's a really crowded running back room in San Francisco, which makes me a little bit nervous, even with Jeff Wilson being hurt, because you've got Trey Sermon, you've got JaMychal Hasty, you've got Willie Gallman. It's a loaded running back room.
Yeah, and I think some of these guys, though, because of these injuries, are starting to become a value. You can get Wayne Gallman in your redrafts right now in the last round. I highly recommend you pick him up in the last round. I think he's a really talented back. He had a stretch last season where he was an RB1 for about 5 or 6 weeks for the Giants behind a subpar offensive line. So I think Wayne Gallman's going to be a value. And Trey Sermon's a guy who, like a lot of players in this league, I watched their college tape and I'm not overly impressed by it. I wasn't overly impressed by Trey Sermon's top end speed, his shift ability, and even his backfield catching as well. But I mean, right now he is a value. In Dynasty leagues, he's going somewhere around the back half the 6th, early 7th round. And in redrafts, he's going in the 9th round. For a guy who could step into a role pretty early in the season, and I know we've already at In Between Media, we've planted our flag that Michael Carter might be the best value for rookie RBs, but he's going up boards now. Michael Carter.
He is going up.
Yes.
He is going up.
People have caught on to him, and Trey Sermon is out there for the taking. So I know we all have Scott Fishbowl coming up. He's a great target if you're punting RBs a little bit later. And I wouldn't be afraid to grab Sermon and Mostert or Sermon and Gallman. I don't want 3 of them, but I would grab 2 of them just to see maybe if I have that running back, because we know one thing with Kyle Shanahan. He's going to run that zone run scheme all over the place, and there's going to be a lot of fantasy value to go around. We just don't know who it's going to be.
Yep. Well, I think that picture will become more clear as we get into training camp. We're going to start to figure out kind of where these players are landing. I think Trey Sermon is probably going to be really good.
I'm in the Trey Sermon camp as well. I mean, they moved up in the 3rd round. They gave 2 4th-rounders to move up and take him. So that says a lot what they think about the long-term viability of Mostert. And they, like you said, there's a lot of guys on the roster. They didn't need to spend that kind of resources to get a guy that they don't believe in.
Right.
So would I see Seth? I would do the same thing. I would go Mostert if I could get Mostert and Sermon. And then if Mostert gets hurt, then my thought is Sermon's going to get in there and he's never going to give that job back until he gets hurt, or if something, next year, if there's another new draft pick or something. So I'm in on that.
I like, and this is one that I forget about, and thank you, Thomas Tipple. Elijah Mitchell is a guy that people aren't talking about, but they went out and they got him in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You don't draft players that you don't believe can make your team.
Yeah.
So they did take him in the 6th round, so I guess that's one thing, but
Terrell Davis was a 6th round draft pick, man.
Right.
Don't ever forget that.
And Elijah Mitchell,
I can't.
He's a guy, he's free in all redrafts, and he's also in a lot of dynasty rookie drafts. He also has the ability to not be drafted in those as well.
Yeah,
so,
you can get him in the 5th round.
Yeah,
waivers.
I've picked him up off waivers right after the draft a couple times in some of these shallower leagues. So, guys, I'm really excited about this San Francisco backfield. We'll touch more on that later in the offseason as well. And in other news, guys, Aaron Rodgers, he's a no-show to OTAs. Jordan Love, for the first time since he's been a Packers, we saw him take some snaps. We've heard good reports out of beat reporters for the last couple of weeks, and he finally took the podium. And he actually had some hard questions coming at him about Aaron Rodgers, and he really did a nice job for a young kid, diverting those questions and saying the right things. I've been impressed with Jordan Love. My headline hijinks for this is Rodgers in love with new lifestyle. Fantasy managers should be in love with Love's current value. So right now, guys, Jordan Love, and again, this is speculation. We don't know what's going on. Obviously, it looks like either A, Rodgers is going to have to get a contract extension. That's what he seems like he wants if he comes back. Or B, he wants traded. So one of those two things is likely to happen. So either A, Jordan Love's value is going to go up, or it's going to plummet. Right now in dynasty drafts, according to Sleeper, he's at about 152 ADP. So you're looking about in the 12th round, and that's in super flex leagues. So this is a guy who could play this season. And Rodgers doesn't have to report. I don't remember what week it was that he has to report, but I know Love could step in for those first couple weeks as well. And in redraft super flex leagues, he's going 166 as well. So wow. Jordan Love's a value to me. I think whether you're doing some Scott Fishbowl mocks, whether you're out there in dynasty leagues, he's a guy I'm targeting, to be honest. Where are you guys at on Jordan Love? And like, I don't want to get into too much of the speculation talk, but where are you at on Love and some of these other Packers? Gary, starting with you, man.
I mean, he's a tremendous value. Like you said, it's a little bit of a gamble, but by the time if Rodgers does end up going back, then nothing's lost. A late round pick. And if he does force his way out, or he retires, or whatever the other scenario may be, then you've got yourself a starting quarterback at dirt cheap prices. He's way worth the gamble to me. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, you go after him, especially that ADP. Like, he's not your top. He's not going to be your top two quarterbacks. Right. He's going to be a guy that, at worst, if he does start and he's playing awful, you have to play him on a bye week where you're quarterback needy. If he doesn't play at all, you get rid of him, and you can stream quarterbacks for that third spot if you need to do it. Mm-hmm. I personally don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. I don't necessarily think he's going to Denver. I think he might retire, but I don't think he's playing in Green Bay. It's a possibility. I mean, okay, and I know there's been a lot of talk about this. I know we didn't want to get too much into the speculation, but this is a dude who cut his family off and does not speak to them. Yep. And has been very steadfast in, I don't like them, I'm not going to talk to them. Yep. They're out of my life. As a very public person doing that, and to be able to maintain that, dude, his beef with the Packers, he will never wear green and yellow again. It won't happen. It will not happen. I'm not going to get into projecting that, but I will say
like Nate, I think you did hit it. Like Aaron Rodgers is a different cat, and
Yeah, dude.
Green Bay's owner came out and said that over the weekend, or general manager, that is, excuse me. And it probably wasn't the best thing for him to say the way he worded it, but like Aaron Rodgers is a different cat. He's been down in Hawaii and different places with Miles Teller and his new girlfriend as well. So, or fiance. So that's been fun to see. And he could get this Jeopardy job and step away. But guys, we will continue to cover this throughout the offseason. But right now, if you're in Dynasty startups or if you're in any type of league, look at Jordan Love. Just look at him in the late rounds. Like Gary said, it's not going to hurt you if you grab him in those late rounds and Rodgers does come back. And best case scenario, you got a value on a starting quarterback in the double-digit rounds of your Dynasty league.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that all said, guys, I do want to move into our newest segment of the show. It's called Back in the Day, and this is going to be a Gary-specific segment. We're going to be bringing Gary on throughout the season to do some different spots and bring his knowledge from not just football, but from life that he can bring to us. So why don't we fire up Back in the Day?
They ain't make them like this way back in the day. Took a shot, couldn't miss way back in the day. Couldn't predict how it could all change. Don't you ever forget how far we came. How far we came. Never forget how far we came. How far we came. Remember how it was way back in the day.
All right, so we're going back in the day, folks. And Gary, with some new players, Dynasty joining every year, it's becoming a very popular format over the last 5 or 10 years. You've been playing for about 15 years or so. So what are some of the biggest trends you can tell to some of the newer players that you've witnessed over the last 15 years that can still be applied to today?
Okay, first of all, I want to say I love that intro. I played those video games, I had those cassettes, and I watched movies from those VHS tapes.
Awesome.
So whoever did that, spot on. Okay, so yeah, so like you said, I have been playing a really long time, and there was when you posed this question, I started thinking, well, what is different? So I kind of looked at all of the different position groups to see what's different from when I started from what's like popular now. So starting with quarterbacks, right now, the strategy would be to wait a little bit on quarterbacks, load up on receivers, load up on running backs, maybe get a tight end early, one of the top ones if you can, and then you can always pick up a quarterback, later in the mid to late rounds, and you'll be fine.
Single QB, right, Gary?
Single QB, yes, of course, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Thank you. So I started looking though, but I remember when I started, the quarterback was we have a 6 point per passing touchdown scoring system. And if you look at whoever won every year, like we take the winners of all the leagues I was in, my group, and it would be always one of the top guys. It was like a Peyton Manning or a Drew Brees and every now and then you'd get like a guy that was in there like Roethlisberger or somebody that had a good year, like Roethlisberger then, where he was still really good, but he wasn't like an elite kind of thing. So I always think that, and so now in a lot of my leagues, I don't mind, like in rookie leagues, I drafted Patrick Mahomes. I have Lamar Jackson. I have all those guys. So Russell Wilson, I stocked up on high, top running backs, and I did get lucky because I picked him at second round. It was before we really knew, but I don't mind throwing a pick, an early or mid second round pick at a quarterback just to see what happens. Mm-hmm. I also drafted Dwayne Haskins a lot of places, so so it's not an exact science, but so pretty much now I like having the top quarterbacks. We've had Patrick Mahomes sold, traded for 3 first-round picks and something,
Wow.
I'm from Kansas City, so everyone that I play with is there, but still, that's a huge return on investment. Running back position, it's interesting that they're just as valuable now as they were then. Like, that's always been the top pick. It's always been the one everyone's going after. Nothing has changed there. That's just all the same, and that is including the introduction of Superflex and PPR. You think that's supposed to lift your wide receivers up, but it kind of didn't really as much.
Well, and it makes sense too, though, with how the passing game has evolved in the NFL, and you're seeing running backs get far more involved in the passing game now.
Yes.
So not only are they getting the carries and the yards and the lion's share of the touchdowns in most offenses, but now with the PPR format, you're stacking points with those catches.
Yes.
So wide receiver, that's one that really kind of hasn't changed much either. Like they have a long career and they can play a long time. So if you get the right guy, you can plug him in your lineup forever. My very first Dynasty league, I drafted Larry Fitzgerald in his second year.
Wow.
And then Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco in like his third year. So I really had both of those guys like for 6 or 7 years, just solid 1-2, never took them out of my lineup. And I was able to stock up on, I didn't have to have all those mid-range, questionable wide receivers. I was able to stock up on a lot of backup running backs, on my roster. So those guys actually turned into starters eventually when they got traded or someone got hurt. So that's kind of been the same thing. I think, it's kind of one of those positions that people wait to draft on now, wide receiver. So tight ends, this one that kind of blew my mind. I started thinking they are way more valuable now. And I don't know, I know just the top couple, 2-3 guys, Waller and Kelsey and Kittle maybe, but back when I started, I don't remember. It was like a throwaway position. It was almost like your kicker. You just had to have one. So you just got somebody whenever and plugged him in. And now they can be a difference maker if you have one of the top guys like Waller and Kelsey will win you games.
Dude, Waller for sure. Oh, and Kelsey and Kittle, yes, but I love Darren Waller. Sorry, you got me all excited. You said his name.
You're right. And do you think it's just because back in the day there weren't these high end tight ends that were catching nearly 100 receptions or going over 1,000 receiving yards? If it wasn't for Travis Kelce's missed game at the end of week 17 or whatever it was last season, he would have led the league in receiving yards. Was there not that back in the day when you started playing, you think?
No, there wasn't, or else it would have been more of a thing, I think. It was just kind of funny when I started. You don't think about stuff like this until you start thinking about it, right? And I was like, yeah, it was just a throwaway. Just make sure you have a kicker, make sure you have a tight end, make sure you have a defense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and unless you got a dude like Shannon Sharp, I mean, there really wasn't anybody else at the tight end position.
Well, there was a lot of touchdowns. I feel like there were guys like Greg Olson and guys like Antonio Gates, Vernon Davis, who maybe would get a lot of touchdowns, but I feel like the receptions and the yardage for me, I feel like at least, only playing the last 11 years or so, specifically redraft, but I feel like that's been Antonio Gonzalez as well. He's another one, but Gary, I think you hit it head on, man. Like tight ends have definitely become a difference maker. And I'm trying to grab an elite tight end wherever I can in Dynasty, whether it's, I haven't hit a lot of those top 3 guys. I haven't really been able to afford that yet, but I have TJ Hawkinson everywhere I can get him. I have a decent amount of Mark Andrews as well.
Man, wait until are you guys in your Scott Fishbowl? Have you guys gotten your picks yet?
Oh yeah.
Your pick assignment? What pick did you get, Seth?
I got 6.
You got 6. Gary, what did you get?
I got 1.
Are you in your chats yet?
Oh yeah. We're on Discord already.
The interesting thing, listening, talking to all the people in these chats, and I've got some pretty big hitter people in these chats. John, it's interesting the strategies going into Scott Fishbowl, where you're we're talking about everybody wants to go quarterback, tight end, quarterback, but everybody wants to grab one of those 3. And once those 3 tight ends are gone, I think everybody else is pretty much okay, well, if they're gone, then I'll get a tight end in a late round, because I've lost all value at that position by not getting Kittle, Kelsey, or Waller.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, Nate. We'll talk more about Scott Fishbowl on our next episode as well. We do have a Scott Fishbowl panel, so hang around with that. We have some guys from Podcast with Upside coming on. We're super excited about that. So,
you're going to make me talk to Jay?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm actually I love Jay and Dan.
Yes, certainly. And for last year, with 2 of my first 5 picks, I went Zach Ertz in the 3rd round, which was a mistake. But then I also took Darren Waller in the 5th. I love tight ends in Scott Fishbowl. I also love just tight ends in fantasy football. I think a lot of people are cool with punting that position. I'm not one. There was a couple years ago when George Kittle had his breakout year, I punted tight end a lot that year because I was really confident in George Kittle. And the year after, I was confident in Mark Andrews. But this year, obviously I know our guy Jeff Bell, he's really high on Jonnu Smith, and there's some other sleepers down there. Robert Tunyon, we've talked about a little bit.
Noah Fant.
Yeah, but the tight ends, man, I really do believe they are a difference maker, especially if you can get one of those high end guys that's scoring 15 points per game, and your opponent's struggling with a waiver wire guy or someone who should be on the waiver wire who's only scoring 5 to 7 points.
Logan Thomas, Irv Smith.
Easy on Logan Thomas.
And be easy on Irv Smith.
I will not be easy on either one of them because they bit me last year, and I should have not suggested them as waiver wire ads.
Logan Thomas was solid, Nate.
He was decent. He was decent.
Some respect. Show some respect, Nate, to Logan Thomas. Jeez.
Tell me to respect. Come on now.
Hate's a strong word, but Nate's willing to say it.
All right, guys, moving forward here, Gary, thank you so much for that back in the day knowledge. I also want another part of this segment is Gary's going to throw it back to some sort of lifestyle trend that we would see back in his day that we don't really see enough of today. So, Gary, what do you have for us today?
Well, I actually gave this a lot of thought, and I looked at a lot of things, and it has to be disco. Right? You want to bring disco back. The clothing, the dance, the music, the cocaine, all of it. No, I'm kidding. So, the one thing I thought of is there's not enough the John Hughes type movies, things that you can just sit down and watch and turn your brain off and just laugh. And it's over in an hour and a half, and you feel good when it's over with, and you just had a good time. Some of these movies now are not even movies, but some, everything's like a series. And you have to understand who all the people are and who fit into what role and who that guy was. And then there's a flashback to when they were a kid, and you got to figure out who the kid was related to the older and then, God forbid you take a couple days off from watching it. And then you're like, were we on episode 8 or 9? I don't know, so and so there's a lot of thinking that goes on, and I don't want to think, if it's, by the time I'm settling in on the couch, I just want to sit there and just smile. So
John Hughes is an all-time great, man. My favorite Christmas movie of all time is Home Alone. John Hughes, baby. I mean, I grew up on Gary, same as you, 16 Candles and 16 Candles. And
I put a list, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
Okay. And I didn't know he wrote the vacation movies too, Christmas European and the original, which
I guess I didn't know that either. Interesting.
What was the movie John Cusack with the boom bomb?
Say Anything.
Yes.
Does it Say Anything?
That's probably not a John Hughes movie, but it gives me those types of vibes.
Yeah, and that's the kind of movie I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be all funny. It can be some emotion like that, but it's just something that you just feel good when it's over. The guy gets the girl, or the girl gets the guy, whatever the situation may be.
Kind of like Deadpool.
Except for a little different.
Just a little different, but the same.
Gary, I love that, man, because I was introduced to the Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, kind of all those types of movies at a pretty young age, and I fell in love with them. And I know my brother and sister, they're a little bit younger than me, and they like those too. But I definitely feel like I have a younger cousin, she's about 12, and I feel like if I said The Breakfast Club or any of these movies, she'd be like, "What are you even talking about?" But
if you showed it to her, she would probably watch it and think, wow, this is pretty cool. I think it's still relatable after all these years. I mean, for sure.
It is. That's great, man. Hopefully over the time we continue to bring these movies back, some of these feel good, just kind of let it all ride out type of movies though. But Gary, I appreciate that, man. You killed this first back in the day segment, man.
Yeah.
Glad to help.
I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to more of it.
Absolutely. We'll be bringing Gary back for back in the day throughout the season, so stay tuned for that. We do want to round out the show with weekly advice.
Weekly advice.
All right, everyone. So we normally for weekly advice, we like to mix feel-good life advice with fantasy sports advice. This week being our Dynasty episode, we wanted to bring in one of our Dynasty analysts from In Between Media, none other than Mike Tulanko at the third Mike.
Where'd he go?
Well, we lost him.
Oh no, what happened? There he is.
Mike.
All right.
What up?
All right, Mike, this is your first time on the In Between Fantasy Football podcast, man. I've known you for a couple years now, but why don't you give a quick introduction to our audience?
Oh man, I am at the third Mike from what I can read, and yeah. So if you want a fantasy introduction, I've been playing for probably about 10 years now. This will be my 10th season. Dynasty for close to half that time, and plenty of redraft and yeah, big into metal, big into fantasy, big into analyzing things from a little bit of a different lens than your typical like, X's and O's. So you'll catch that tonight, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And Mike does have a column with us at In Between Media, Decisions. You kind of break down a little bit of fantasy theory in there, if I'm right on that, Mike.
It's like fantasy theory / life theory. Like,
yeah,
I try to give you some life nuggets in there. You can choose to do with them as you please, right? Just like everything else in life. But but I've lived a very vibrant life, so I'll leave it at that. So if you could take anything from it, please do.
Absolutely, Mike. Well, we appreciate having you on today. The purpose of bringing you on, Mike, is you're somebody who I feel like really does understand the difference between redraft value and dynasty fantasy football value. And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to have this show is because I'm in a newer dynasty league. I've been playing dynasty. I think this is going to be my 4th season, but I'm in a league with some guys from my home league who have specifically played redraft for the last 10 years of our lives together. And we've been in this league, and a lot of people have said we've had some trades recently, but up until our rookie draft, there weren't a lot of trades going around, and people have said, I'm kind of afraid to make trades because I don't understand the difference in value between redraft and dynasty. So, Mike, can you do your best to kind of break that down for newer players in dynasty?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I think of redraft and dynasty, the big difference, right, is that in redraft, you're making a bet on a player, right, for one season that they're going to do well or that they're going to maybe pop here and there week in and week out. Dynasty, it's like it's a bit of a bigger bet, right? So instead of putting a couple chips in on a player, right, for this hand, like you're playing for like poker hands down the line. You're putting a lot more money in. And you have to think of each player as a long-term investment versus a short-term investment, even if you don't plan on keeping them around. Because if you're not, you're going to look to get that value out of them that's going to make them still count as like a long-term investment or a long-term play for you.
So Mike, as far as positions go here as well, like obviously running back is king in redraft. Like you need to stock up on an RB. It's extremely, there's a reason there's the hot debate about zero RB truthers out there. What's the biggest difference you think between value between the running back and wide receiver position when it comes to dynasty specifically?
Yeah. So look, everybody's got a different theory, a different take on it. And one of the things I'll tell you up front is that I think it's really important to be open to a diversity of thought when it comes to this. Now, after years of playing and studying people that I really like believe in, and I've seen their success and that sort of thing, I've come to the conclusion between like wide receivers and running backs that, I consider a wide receiver like more of a long-term play, right? Like you're looking for somebody who is going to be there for you for a while at wide receiver if you're going to acquire someone. Whereas running backs, typically they're churn and burn, right? You want to get them young, and then make sure that you're able to move on from them before they get to that point where all of a sudden they're in a committee or you got Todd Gurley knees. I have one of those myself, so I understand his pain. But yeah, you definitely want to get them while they're young and be able to turn them over, before their perceived value is lower. There's a big difference between, in my mind, value and perceived value as well. But
Nate, as a newer dynasty player, have you witnessed that at all lately? Like wide receivers going a lot earlier in your dynasty leagues rather than your redraft leagues? Like, I'll be honest, guys, I've been in a dynasty league and like Justin Jefferson's my guy. So like I've been gunning for him in whatever dynasty league I can get him, whether that's the first or second round. Nate, being a newer player, what have you witnessed? I know you've been in like something like 20 startups this offseason.
Oh, just like 19. It's a lot. So many of them have been IDP too, which just is a whole different wrinkle. But, wide receivers go a lot earlier in Dynasty. Like, no joke. Like, you need to get on your wide receivers early because, again, like Mike was saying, that's a long-term asset. These are guys that you're holding for 6-7 years, not a running back who's going to be good for 2 to 3, and then you're trying to sell him before he falls off a cliff, which makes sense to me. And as I'm learning this format, I mean, that's why I did so many startups. I'm like, I write about it, so I need to know more about it. And the more drafting I can see and the more roster construction I can see, the better I'm going to get at it. But I see that, and I'm going after wide receivers way earlier. Like getting a second round wide receiver, the first time I did it felt weird. It was like, but I want Stephon Diggs because I think that for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years in Buffalo, he's a difference maker. So I wanted him for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. It's interesting. Dynasty is interesting. If you've never played it before, I highly recommend it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of ageism in Dynasty as well too, so you'll get that out of a lot of people. I'm not your prototypical Dynasty player. I'm a big fan of those unsexy players that don't necessarily like you're not going to get a lot in return if you trade for them, but they're great to get in throw-ins when you get them back. So I think of somebody like last year, like a Cole Beasley was a great value. Like I got him for dirt at the end of the season before, like literal dirt. I was like, here, you want some dirt? And they're like, yeah, here's Cole Beasley. Bee stings juiced up like a food truck. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'll take him, right? Because he's going to put up points, like meaningful dynasty points in your flex every week. And there's a chance that he may boom or bust, especially as we saw, last season. It worked out, right? So some of those older players like him, and I don't know how I feel about him this year, but historically, like Marvin Jones has been another one of those players. Like he just doesn't get the love, but he puts up points, and you can get him as a throw-in or cheap to equal, the value that somebody sees in someone else. So those are the kind of players that I think are really important to understand in Dynasty, and to not be afraid to quote unquote lose a trade today to win a game or win a league tomorrow. And part of that draft strategy, I was like making faces at you, Nate, because part of that draft strategy too, when you're looking at a startup, it's a little bit different than obviously rookie drafts, but when you're looking in the startup draft, part of what you need to do as well too is obviously understand your scoring, know the room. It doesn't matter what type of league you're playing, and understand the scoring, know the room is super duper important, right? Know who you're playing with. And the fact of the matter is if people are gobbling up wide receivers left and right, and there's value to be had there at other positions, take it. Take the value at the other positions, because there will be a scarcity at one point when you're loaded up with those people. And even though it seems like a short term, like what the hell am I doing on my roster sort of thing, you've got a whole season to work towards, finding that balance that you're looking for.
Right.
And quite honestly, in the best advice I can give for anybody getting into Dynasty is to be in the mindset of competitive rebuild every year. Like you want to constantly be rebuilding and constantly be competitive. You don't want to be a farm, and you don't want to sell all of your assets that you can rebuild with just to win. I've made that mistake. Don't do it. Just to win 1 year, right? And then like be terrible for the next 2 or 3 years and have no picks and that sort of thing. Don't trash one of your leagues like I have.
I've done the same. I did the same thing, Mike. I was a contender, and I thought, I could win X amount of money, whatever. I'm going to do my first round pick to make sure I get the guy that that could help me win, and I won. And then I let next rookie draft. I couldn't pick anybody because I'd given all my picks away, and that team. It fell apart, and I had to stop hoard picks at that point. And then I've eventually built it back up, but it's through the draft process. So I agree totally.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of my youth. I'm like, I could spend a bunch of money and go to like one concert that's going to be really freaking awesome this summer. Right. Or I could I could take the money that I have and I could look at smaller shows, small venues, and space it out and have lots of memories for one summer, aka points, right, from your players. I have lots of really cool memories and plug them in and make a hell of a summer or a hell of a team, right? By dispersing that value and finding where it makes sense, to place that value versus blowing it all on one player just because I think there's not going to be anyone left. There's always going to be someone, and wide receivers usually take like 2 or 3 years before they really blow up. We've had that, 1 or 2 seasons here and there where like, oh my God, look at all these guys. They're crazy. But like last year's kind of the norm. There might be like 1 or 2 that are super hot. And then everybody else, they're going to take time.
Yeah. Like the CeeDee Lambs and the Jerry Judys, like those guys are going to take a minute to develop. Not everybody can be Justin Jefferson. I wish they could. I wish Jerry Jeudy was Justin Jefferson. Man,
easy. CeeDee Lamb was pretty good off the rip, but
he was. Imagine how much better he's going to be with Dak healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, I kind of want to round out this discussion a little bit. Gary, you had brought up tight ends earlier, and kind of how the shift over the last 15 years or so has been that tight ends are way more valuable than they used to be. Gary, kind of starting with you and then going into Mike, what have you noticed with drafting rookie tight ends? Because obviously we all know it takes at least 2 or 3 years before they're going to break out. Obviously Kyle Pitts, he's a little bit different this year. He's, one of the highest regarded tight end prospects we've seen in a while. But where are you guys not Kyle Pitts? We're taking Kyle Pitts out of this equation, but like a normal tight end, a Hawkinson, a Fant, a Mark Andrews, George Kittle, like these type of guys, when they first came in the league, like where were you willing to spend a pick on them? And because like obviously they're probably going to sit on your taxi squad for a season or 2 at least.
Sure, yeah. The guys that you mentioned specifically, so a lot of during that time when they were on their rookie draft years, I had been winning, so I was picking at the 9 and 10 slot.
Okay,
so I was doing the 9 and 10 on them on Hawkinson. One time I had the 9 and the 10 through a trade, and I took Fant and Hawkinson back to back.
Okay,
I figured one of them's got to hit. But that was after the tight end position had already been a little bit more. You could tell, you wanted the Kelsey type guy, and I was just playing my odds. Now I'm not sure who. I'm never going to go back and look at who I passed on to get both of those tight ends because that will just drive me crazy. But I also took OJ Howard at 10 years ago. And he's still on, and he's not eligible for taxi squad. So now he's sitting on my bench, wasting a spot. But I won't cut him because next year is going to be the year, and then the next year is going to be the year, and then maybe even the 3rd year after that. So, but yeah, I'm willing to go that high. When Gronk first came out, and Jimmy Graham, just from being an older player, they were 3rd round picks in my rookie leagues. They kind of came out of nowhere. So, there's not, and, Tunyon, like we talked about earlier, he's another one that kind of don't remember even where he got drafted, but these were late picks. So the 1st round picks haven't always panned out, but I'm always willing to throw a late first at someone that's supposed to be a stud.
So you're telling me that my 4th round Brevin Jordan pick maybe wasn't as bad as I felt like it was?
You just never know. Arian Foster was a 5th round pick in our leagues when he first came out. And he was a bright shining star that just burned out quick, but he gave us 3 or 4 years, I think, worth of top RB1 performance. And he was like just a throw in. People were just, at the end of the draft when no one's paying attention, he was one of those guys. So you just never know what you're going to see.
Man, I hope I get stuff to pan out like that from these rookie drafts.
Right.
That would be so nice.
I mean, the reason I can even bring those names up is because it's so rare. I mean, if it happened, most of the time, as you all know, those are just guys you cut after the taxi squad year, however long you can keep them, a year, 2 or 3 years, whatever it is.
Who else has drafted Trey McKitty?
Nope.
No.
Am I the only one here that's drafted Trey McKitty?
Pat Freiermuth, baby.
I've got a little bit of Freiermuth, but McKitty's been a guy like nobody's taken him. Okay, like 5th round of these rookie drafts. Like I don't know any of these other names. Like I'm confused. I'm taking, and I like. Well, first of all, I'm taking. If I'm being honest, McKitty. Come on, that's a cool name. I just want to see a dude in the NFL with the last name McKitty on his back catching like 10 touchdown passes in 2022 because that sounds like fun.
That's the dream, Nate. That's the dream.
That's the dream.
I can
draft based on names. What am I, 12?
I can think of all the terrible like name puns already. Like,
oh well, yeah. This is a family show, Mike.
I know. I'm a family guy. No, but like Peter Griffin. But hey, so we were talking about tight ends, right? And drafting them and thinking about it. So like if we're talking startup, I'm fully prescribed to the idea that if you don't get one of the top 3, like forget it. You might have to take some bets on some people who have decent consistency over the seasons, but you're gonna need like 2 or 3 of them and hope that you pick the right week and that they pan out.
Yep.
And really, when you draft one of those top 3 tight ends, you're drafting a wide receiver, right? That you get to put in a tight end slot from the scoring perspective. And that's really what you're looking for. If you can't do that, and we're looking at, let's say, rookie drafts. With rookie drafts, I take a gamble or 2 on a tight end, like in that 4th or 5th, maybe late 3rd, and just let them sit around forever. But I'm pretty patient. My suggestion is always that every year someone newer and sexier and more exciting comes out, right? And people in Dynasty can be patient, but tend to be impatient and love that shiny new toy, especially if somebody disappointed or just didn't quite live up to that height that they were looking for. And tight ends tend to be something where you can plant that carrot in someone else's garden and go get it on the cheap a little bit later. So, you think about the time that it took for Fant to even see targets, and it took people being broken on the team, right, for him to see that. And then, same thing kind of happened to Hawk, right? In the first year to himself, he had a couple blow up games, and then like he was hurt and some other stuff. Yep. So like you can wait on tight end and a rookie draft and know that if there's somebody you like and they don't pan out in the first season, like have a few that you like and you feel good about, you can pick them up in their 2nd, maybe 3rd season before they really explode and develop, while other people are kind of getting tired of them and feeling blue about them. Especially pay attention to your trades. You see somebody trade and get a higher end tight end and have some of these guys on their bench. Take the opportunity to pluck them up.
Awesome.
So just real quick, thank you, Jimmy, Teo's girlfriend. I can now not unsee how much you look like Rob McElhenney. Because, dude, like I wish we had a picture that we could just throw up here real quick and put you guys side by side, but we don't.
Yeah. I get familiar face comments a lot. I had some dude at Home Depot tonight ask me if he knew me from something. I'm like, nah, bro.
I was in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Mythic Quest. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. I don't know. I had a drunk guy at a bar in Boston one time come up to me and ask me, he was like convinced that I was Ben Affleck. Like
Nice.
1000% convinced I was Ben Affleck.
Is this like the TikTok thing where like he puts celebrity over you instead of a lady and like figures out how many shots it's gonna take? It's like, oh yeah, it's
Dude.
looking like Ben now. Oh yeah.
The only social
Batman.
media back then was MySpace. So that was like
Hey.
15 years ago. I actually
Yeah.
did look good 15 years ago.
That explains everything if they would see you on MySpace. That angle where you're like, hold on. You
Oh,
were
yeah,
way
right?
down- you were way down here. Right?
Right?
All the way over here.
You weren't
All
like
right, well,
you weren't like Mallrats Affleck. You were like Phantoms Affleck.
Yeah, no, not Mallrats Affleck. No.
Yeah.
I was bearded Affleck for sure.
nice.
Nice.
Well, guys, I appreciate all the Dynasty fantasy football discussion today. It's been really great to talk about this after talking about redraft on and on and on. I hope our returning listeners and any new listeners really picked up some value from today's show. Just to round it out, guys, I just want to go around the room real quick, starting with Mike. If you have any last minute either Dynasty advice or just life advice as we head into the back half of June here. Crazy to say, but 2021, we're already about halfway through, guys. So Mike, starting with you, man, what either fantasy football advice or life advice can you leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of things here. So fantasy football wise, the best thing you can do is eliminate any sort of biases you have or anchors. Anchors being like your predisposition to a player based on like one season. Keenan Allen is a perfect example. How everybody hated him because he's injury prone, but we all know he's not. He's a stud. Eliminate that as much as you can. And honestly, that's life advice too. You can meet new people. You can see somebody and meet them in their worst moment, or you can meet them in their best moment. And you can't necessarily allow that to attach their overall value as a person to you in life. It's easy to be upset by stuff or get wrapped up in things early on and not really allow the full picture to come to fruition. And that's what you got to do in life and Dynasty.
I love that,
Mike. Thank you. Gary, what do you got for us, man?
How do I follow that? Hey, that was deep and wide.
Drink beer.
Well, first of all, I do remember.
That's great advice. I love it.
Yeah. All right, I'll go with that. I do remember that from one of your decisions column, and I really enjoyed that one. So it's a good memory to bring back for me because you always space things out. Mine's not going to be anywhere near as cool as Mike's, but for Dynasty, just don't trade away all your picks for the flavor of the day. If Denzel Mims last year was kind of at the end of the season, he was having some hot run, and people like, okay, we're getting Trevor Lawrence in here next time. He's going to be this great thing. And you could trade a first. I traded 2 second-round picks for him just for a personal example. And which I was like, okay, that'll be fine. It's a little high, but I want to get my guy. And then I'm thinking now, if I had those 2 picks, who knows who I could have gotten in the second round from the rookies that would have been, sometimes you're just going to miss a guy. And if you miss him, that's great. That's why you play in more than one league. And then you can get him in another league if you really have to have him. So, yeah, I felt that was – and he could have panned out. It could have been a Justin Jefferson kind of a deal too. But you just try your odds with keeping your picks. Don't get too, everyone's like, oh, I want Laviska Shenault because he's going to break out this year. And he may, but you give 2 second-round picks, and those second-round picks, you can get the next Shenault or the next Mims or the next whoever. So that's my advice.
I feel personally attacked, Gary.
I looked at you, and that's when I thought of Shenault. So I'm like, I got to do this. I could have picked anybody.
But I chose you.
I see how it is, Gary. Thought we
now
were
I'm
friends.
in trouble.
Hey, what do you got for us, brother?
So something I've been seeing lately on social media that's driving me nuts, and I'm going to relate it back to Scott Fishbowl. People who aren't getting into Scott Fishbowl are being really nasty towards Scott Fish and Ryan McDowell and the whole thing that is Scott Fishbowl. And look, I get it. You want to be included, and I understand that not being included sometimes sucks. But 10,000 people applied to get into Scott Fishbowl. He can't put 10,000 people in that league. Understand, you've got to take your shot every year. And yes, people who are doing analysis have a better shot of getting in. But that's the way it's built. If you don't like that, that's fine. But don't trash a guy who is doing more work for free. He's not getting paid to do any of this Scott Fishbowl stuff. He's doing it. Him and Ryan McDowell are doing it out of the kindness of their heart. And if you're going to sit and trash the guy, first of all, I'm going to block you. Second of all, you need to think about why you're so upset and what else is going on in your life that you're so angry about a charity event that is raising $100,000 for Fantasy Cares. And if you want to trash people for that, if you want to trash Scott Fish for that, get out of here. Take a deep breath and realize you didn't get in this year. Bummer, dude. There's always next year. And then the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. You just got to try. But don't rip the dude who's putting in more work than all of us combined through an entire season just to put together a charity tournament to help kids.
Appreciate that.
Also, be smart about your draft picks in Dynasty. Don't reach. And really seriously, don't trade away those first, second, and third round picks, man. Hold on to those. If you're trying to build a team, that's what your taxi squad is for. Be smart about your draft picks. I'm really learning that after some trades I made last season and then going into rookie drafts this year and just wishing I had that draft capital that I don't have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Backing off of what Nate said there are a lot of other charity leagues out there if you're interested in playing in one. Mike, you actually do the Giving League every year. So if you want to give a quick plug to that, if anyone's interested in joining that.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I would love to. So quick, near and dear to my heart, the Giving League both promotes, raising money for domestic violence victims and organizations that support those victims, but also the charity of your choice. So if you win, you get to donate half of the money to a charity of your choice, and the company I work for will double it. So every year it's about now that I do about 48 people, it's about $1,200 to your favorite charity. It only costs you $25 to play, and you get all kinds of cool swag this year, like Bob Lung's consistency guide and a free month at Dynasty Nerds. And if you win your division, Dynasty Nerds is going to give you a free year, which is pretty tight.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Well worth it.
So it's a great cause. I make it lots of fun, do lots of little spiffs and videos and goofy things, and you'll have a blast. Everybody always does who plays it, but hit me up in my DMs at the third Mike. It's right there.
Slide right into those DMs, guys.
Slide right in.
You heard it here first.
Appreciate that, Mike. Appreciate Rob down there putting together this league.
You guys, who doesn't want to be in Rob McElhenney's awesome charity league? Dude, yep. Okay, Mike. That's a nice picture.
That is great.
I love it.
That is
okay.
great.
Short, you can take that down now. It's starting to creep me out a little bit.
All right. All right, guys. I will round out today's discussion. Seriously, I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate everyone who's joined us tonight. Gary, I appreciate you and Mike jumping on with us. Nate, always appreciate your presence with us. And just thank you, everyone, for the continued support here in Between Media. We're about, I want to say, 6 days since our 1-year anniversary. So super thankful for all the support over this last year. We're going to continue to bring both feel-good life and lifestyle advice, combining that with fantasy sports advice all season long. So hang around with us if you would, please. My final piece of advice is, I tweeted this out a little bit earlier today, but I think it's a good thought. Not every day is going to be great. I know a lot of times we talk about positivity and we want to be, push that as much as we can here in Between Media. But like this week it's kind of been a hell week for a lot of people. Me in particular, I've been at work a lot, my day job. I know Scott couldn't join us today specifically because of his day job. So not every day is going to be great. Some days are going to be a sack of shit, but it's up to us as individuals to make it as good as it can be. So whatever you're going through, know you're not alone. Know that my DMs are always open. Nate's, Gary's, Mike's, everyone here in Between Media. We're here for you. We're going to continue to be here for you, but continue to make the best out of your day. Whatever that day is, we appreciate you guys. Know someone cares, and we definitely care about you. So thank you again for joining us on the In Between Fantasy Football podcast. Crazy to say it's already been episode 9 of 2021. We'll be back in 2 more weeks. Be sure to follow us all at our socials below. You can find us at www.inbetweenmedia.com and anywhere on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at IBT_media. If you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. We appreciate it, guys. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. But before then, keep it in between.